Probably the biggest news of the weekend in Houston sports was that the Astros were able to get Ryan Presley to waive his no trade clause. Presley was traded to the Chicago Cubs in exchange for $8.5 million of salary relief and for a reliever by the name of Juan Bello. They were about 3 million over the first luxury tax threshold before the trade. This gets them underneath that. And now the big question is, Joe, what's next? Does this mean that Alex Bregman is going to return to the Astros, which is something that was heavily hinted at by most baseball reporters leading up to the deal being made?
It should lead to at least a move of some kind, because it really, the closer we get to spring training, the more just like looking at like roster projections and or anything, or seeing people tweet out projected lineups that contain Dubon, um, McCormick, and Myers as your outfield is terrifying. If your goal is to get completely under, then congratulations. Like, they've done that. You're not over the tax. If that's all that Jim Crane cares about, then like it's his business, right? We can't. I can question that the window's always open as long as you're the owner, as he said. But if that's his business and that's his prerogative and doesn't want to get taxed, like, that's fine. But they need to add. They need to add another piece, and even if it's not Alex Bregman, they need at least one good outfielder, because right now they have zero.
They do not have any. You're right. At least that you would want to rely on. I mean, I like Mauricio Dubon, but he's more of a super utility player. I'd definitely rather have him in the outfield than Jake Myers swinging the bat on a game to game basis. Even if Myers did have a little bit of a hot streak earlier this past season, I'm really curious as to if there's a next move, and I'm skeptical that there will be a next move because I do think this is about them getting underneath the collective balance tax more than it is about getting extra space, because they're going to have to go back over the collective balance tax to bring in Bregman. And while it's at least implied by some who are familiar with his thinking that Jim Crane would be willing to go over it for a specific, and I believe this was the term used by Chandler Rome, cherry on top, Bregman would qualify here. But have you heard anything about the Astros potentially upping their offer, even slightly, for Bregman from the deal that's been on the table for a while, 6 years and about $156 million? I have not seen anything. And I mean, the latest reporting from Will Kunkel, Fox 26, is that it's doubtful that a move for Bregman is going to be made. And Joe, perhaps putting a tinfoil hat on here for a moment, I wonder if the Astros got caught with their pants down here. And I say from this perspective, Presley was a very convenient fall guy to not bring Bregman back.
Mm-hmm.
And with the reporting that was being done about how these two moves are linked, a potential Presley move and bringing Bregman back, I wonder if the Astros got caught with their pants down a little bit here, because I think they might have believed Presley was never going to waive that no trade clause because his wife wants to stay here in Houston.
Interesting.
And they definitely peer pressured him into accepting it. And I understand that some people are saying, oh, well, the writing was on the wall. True, but I mean, he did have the no trade clause that was in his contract because he's played the necessary years to actually get that stipulation. So you wonder, okay, did they think that this was never actually going to cross the finish line? Because this would have been the most convenient scapegoat to have for not bringing back Bregman. Now it's back on the Astros. And the only way for them to make people maybe look the other way and say, like, hey, like, why are you not able to bring back Alex Bregman? Is it really because of Jose Abreu contracts? Is it really because of Rafael Montero contract? A Josh Hader contract?
Especially when those two contracts, like, it only penalizes you for 1 year. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like Montero and Abreu are under contract, or the money that is owed to them is on the books for the next 3 seasons of Alex Bregman's potential 6-year deal. You get out of all of that stuff at the end of the year. Framber Valdez will probably be off the team after this season. Like, as much as people are talking about the collective bargaining tax and like the implication it has on the Astros, I think it's a really, honestly, just like a lame excuse, because it's not a problem next year. I mean, they're going to have money before you know it. Like, so Presley, Montero, Abreu, Fromber, Tucker are all gone. And now you've brought in Christian Walker, who makes a good chunk of change, and Isaac Paredes, who makes a good chunk, but they're not expensive players. And we all know they're not giving $22 million to Framber Valdez next year.
Correct.
Like, we all know that. Like, no matter what happens in this move or not, like, they're not going to pay him. Like, I don't personally, and this is like, I'm not convinced that like next offseason the Astros aggressively spend to get close to the CBT. Like, right now they're trying to get away from it. Like, I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see. I mean, the only report we got that was about the Astros upping their offer. It wasn't a report. Jeremy Booth alluded to the fact that the Astros have done it, but at this point, no one has come back and said they've increased that number. So yeah, I don't believe Bregman's going to be back, and I hope I'm wrong, but
This
hard to see it.
was this was Astros GM Dana Brown Friday with Ari Alexander. He was asked if the Astros would be willing to go over that collective balance tax threshold.
Yeah, so here's what I would say, and I've said this a few times, that Jim Crane has always been about putting good product on the field and, getting to the postseason and trying to go deep into the postseason and the ultimate goal of winning the World Series. So, look, I think Jim will go over the CBT if he has to. If we feel like, look, this makes a fit and it makes sense. So he's always shown that he's dedicated to do that. I'm not saying we're going to do it this year, but I think, Jim Crane will do it if he thinks it's a good move for the club and long term, it's a fit.
I mean, he's right. I mean, Jim Crane has, so I think we have to take him for his word out of it. But like, do you believe that Alex Bregman's worth it? Is kind of what that question is now turned into. Because Josh Hader was worth it. Zach Greinke was worth it. We know from reporting that Jim Crane thought Starling Marte was worth it, even though the Astros didn't get that deal done. So what Dana Brown basically just told us is that, well, Jim Crane has to decide if Alex Bregman's worth it or not.
I think he's worth it.
I think he is too.
I think he's worth it from a just clubhouse presence perspective, from a very few people are as smart from a baseball perspective as him. And on top of that, it makes your lineup better. And yeah, you're going to perhaps be pretty crappy on defense in certain spots. Say you have to move Jose Altuve to left field, or there's other tinkering that goes on. Maybe Isaac Paredes gets moved to left field. Again, I don't know. All I know is you've kind of put yourself in a situation where if you do not bring him back after making this move where you traded Ryan Presley for minimal salary relief, you're going to look bad.
Well, you just need, and you're just not going to be as good as you can be.
Yes.
You're not as good as you can be, and to acquire, there were players available this offseason that you could have pursued, but you chose not to because of this arbitrary number that you are not willing to go past
For the total years of a salary, right?
Yeah.
Because they never offer more than 6. And hey, maybe there would have been somebody that they actually could go after and actually afford on top of all of that. I don't know the answer to that necessarily, but what I do know is Jim Crane can't say, as you heard from Dana Brown there, that the window is always open and you can't buy into the idea that he'll always spend if after making this move with Ryan Presley, when it's heavily implied that it is a move made to help you bring Alex Bregman back. If you don't bring him back, you look bad. Not to the national media. Like I see the Twitter's like, oh, it's the national media. No. And we've talked about Presley getting strong armed into accepting this and waiving his no trade clause, which I do think is a bad look by the Astros. But no, they will look bad to all of us because we will be watching the product and they will not be as good as they were last year if that is someone that they are missing. I get it that they've added some pieces this year, and maybe those guys are going to be great at Minute Maid Park or, Daikin Park, my bad, and working with Astros pitching staff, and coaches. But they'll look bad if they made this trade just to save $8.5 million.
Yeah, I kind of hate the way baseball operates around this. Like in general, like you have teams that want to get below it, you have teams that don't want to spend, then you have the Dodgers who, of course, just spend so much money, do not care what is in front of them. But like also like with Bregman coming back too, you also defensively are the best corner infield, and what you lack in the outfield, you now make up for at third and first, and you have a 3-time straight Gold Glove winner at first base. We know how elite Alex Bregman is at third base. You would think that Isak Paredes can play well. We know Jeremy Payne is a pretty good shortstop. I mean, as weak as your outfield is, you have the best infield maybe in baseball if you bring Alex Bregman back. So like, while you have weaknesses, you also have massive strengths at other spots. So I, it's not my money. I can't make him spend it, but to walk into this offseason because of a handful of $1 million and not be able to, sign a better piece just seems like a huge mistake for me. I just don't understand why you wouldn't do it. And if Alex Bregman's sitting there, I mean, that they are lucking into the idea of Alex Bregman still being a free agent. So it, I just think it makes so much sense. I don't really get why people would be against it, except for all the Astros fans who trashed the hell out of Alex Bregman.
Yeah, stay on that side.
And are now trying to come back
Stay on
around.
that side.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that, wasn't
There was
there?
a lot of it.
A lot of
There's a lot of
the
it.
day
You don't
after
wanna
Christian
come
Walker
back?
signed.
Yeah.
It's like we didn't need him anyways. He's
No
on a
loyalty.
decline. And
Yeah.
now they're back down trying to get Alex Bregman back on the team.
I think if you're traitor, specifically what I think Paul, you mentioned the Jim Crane, the window's always open comment. That's what makes me think that Jim Crane is willing to go over the CBT for Alex Bregman, is because that comment, and because frankly, he's just someone who's done it before on the Astros. It would be different if it was an Alex Bregman level player, if all the same things of Alex Bregman, but it's a guy who played on the Royals for the last 7-8 years instead of a guy who's been in the clubhouse for the Astros all this time. We see it that he treats Justin Verlander differently than he would treat a normal 39, 40-year-old pitcher. That there's certain guys that obviously are going to get special treatment, honestly, rightfully so, for most of the guys that get this kind of treatment. And I think that's what's ultimately going to lead, at least the Astros being competitive in the Alex Bregman market until he signs. It could ultimately still come down to they're not willing to go, $30 million for 2 years, and the Cubs or the Red Sox or whoever are willing to do that. They could still get beat, but I do think that there is interest, legitimate interest.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like if there's going to be like finally a bidding war that's finally taking place here. Like after all this time in which the Tigers, Red Sox, Cubs, Yankees, Astros, I could have just paid them, but like now all of a sudden it's like
I don't think it'll be a bidding war the same way. I think it might be a bidding war in the 2-year like pillow contract type of, like, can we do 31? Can we do 3 years with opt-outs? Like, I think it would be a different type of negotiation. It's not gonna be, can we do 160 million? Can we do 170? That he would have already signed if those deals were going to happen.
And you're at the point now in the auction where you're just like hoping that
you're hoping to get a deal.
The clock expires. No, yeah. I think they're just like, well, hopefully in the next 16 days, no one makes an offer. I think that's their strategy.
Yeah, no one gets more desperate. Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like anyone's going to get more desperate, which is rather surprising. But I guess the teams that, you're competing with, because the Mets pulled out over the weekend.
Yeah. Mets pulled out.
It's just Detroit, Boston, and Toronto, I think.
And Chicago. The Cubs.
The Cubs are in it. Okay.
And even
I think
Cubs North or Astros North.
If he goes to the Cubs, we might have to become a Chicago Cubs show. Just or at least a Cubs segment.
I mean, there'll be like,
I'll be a Steve Barton.
Right now, there are two guys from the 2022 team on the Cubs. The over-under has to be at least 2.5 because they're looking at Maton and Stanek still.
Oh my!
So like, they're basically just like,
who's their GM?
It's Jed Hoyer. I don't know what he. I don't know why he's obsessed with 2022 Astros, but like
Hector Neris coming to come back.
I don't think he needs to come back. Is he still in the Astros?
I actually do not know.
I assume he was on a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
I
think Maton and Stanek will be Cubs.
That would be really fun.
Wow, they just have the 22 bullpen minus Rafael Montero. They can still have them if they're
you know what, declined
if they're interested on behalf of Jed Hoyer.
Yes.
If they were to trade Rafael Montero, realistically, how much?
A punch in the face. That's what they get back.
How much of his salary would they get the other team to pay? Like, what do you think?
5%. Actually $1. Like a token, like $1.
I mean, he is owed $11.5 million this year. So if Presley is worth 8.5, Montero's worth
2.
I was gonna say 3.
$2 million. What's the minimum?
They're gonna have
like
to eat-
the minimum.
They're gonna have to eat $8.5 million to save 3.5.
It would be really funny if they they've agreed to pay $1 million of his $29 million
I mean,
contract.
trading Ryan Presley opens the door, since we like doors here now in Houston.
It's a
apparently.
jar, that's for sure.
It opens the door for Rafael Montero to have a good spring training
Oh my god.
and be in the
Oh my
bullpen.
God.
Stop.
He's on the roster.
Cool.
You don't think he's gonna be on the opening day
Hard
roster?
pass.
The Sugarland one? I hope so.
Yeah, even that. I don't know if I want him on the Sugarland.
Just that close.
Face Cowboys. Listen, this
Doors
is
open.
that's
for
a
Montero.
3-time champion in one season. Do we want Rafael Montero being something?
To be fair, he only won 2 of those. He only won 2 of those championships. He was still on the Astros when the first half championship.
Gotcha. He didn't
thing
get the
happened.
first half
Yeah,
championship.
so he's only a 2-time.
So does he get 2 T-shirts?
2 rings?
2 rings? How does that work?
I still don't know how many things they got for all these awards.
Let's ask Cooper Hummel.